You only need to know me. I will be the one.
So this video was recorded prior to chapter 1023. It might contain some pictures from the chapter though, so spoilers. But a lot of stuff happened in chapter 1022 as well, and I'm looking forward to where things will go, especially with regard to Sanji and Zoro and their fight with King and Queen. Will it be a full-on tag team like the last time they really had each other's backs and fought together on Longring Island, the Davy Back fight? Or will this fight break apart into individual matches? And so moving on to the main topic of this video, Zoro versus King finally. And the ancient race of King from a possible land of gods, a red line which is now occupied by what some might call false gods. It is the notion of gods and the like that has me believing Zoro was destined to fight King for several reasons aside from King having a sword, being a swordsman, and Zoro needing to prove himself against another powerful swordsman on his journey to becoming the world's greatest. When Oda sets characters up to fight, he said he wants to tell a story, that the emotional impact of the story that is told throughout the fight and the lessons learned as a result of the fight are more important than recreating the typical action-packed fights with explosive collisions and crazy power-ups that you typically see from other shonen series, anime, manga, or otherwise. Based on some potential evidence we'll go over shortly, it seems like Oda is pitting Zoro against a fellow demonic figure, a devil or fallen angel. Queen told us King is sadistic and loves to torture, and there are various moments where you could say Zoro is as well. A few quotes that come to mind are, "Have you ever seen a wild beast you were sure would never bite?" Or what he said to Kaku back during Andy's lobby, when drawing his sword, "It has been growling. It craves blood." We don't know if King has a cursed sword, at the very least a supreme great sword. Gotta give our man King something, Oda. But like I said, we'll come back to the topic of personality later. Let's focus on beliefs for now, primarily religion and superstition. Zoro is said to be someone that heavily believes in fate and destiny in general. When it comes to adversity and the idea of curses, aside from sheer willpower, Zoro leaves it to luck to determine the outcome. But we can also interpret this as undying faith and a belief in his own ability, a confidence in himself that masquerades as luck at times. One of the most obvious instances of this is when he took an interest in the cursed blade Sandai Kitetsu and left it up to fate to decide if he would wield it by testing his luck against the sword's curse. He tossed the sword, spinning it into the air, and extended his left arm into its falling path to see if it would cut him, fully aware that the sword was sharp enough to easily sever his arm. And this moment has actually been compared to Zoro's left eye. What a coincidence that each is on the left side of his body. Some say it was intentionally closed because of its curse, others say Zoro accidentally scarred himself while training with Mihawk, who knows. Maybe for his eye, unlike his arm, his luck finally ran out. Or maybe it was deliberately done. But the concept of fate is later shown again after the 2-year time skip when he tells the pirates of the ship he had just destroyed to blame fate for him ending up on the wrong ship. When dealing with Enel, the false kami of Skypiea, there was a moment Zoro was asked by Sanji if he believed in God. But Zoro did not show any devotion toward the idea of one, and did not care one way or the other. This has led many to consider Zoro an atheist, although it seems he's simply conveying Buddhist principles, since if Zoro was a real person, he'd be from Japan, and Buddhism is prevalent there. But if so, it's ironic given how Mihawk is constantly surrounded by holy imagery, the Christian cross or crucifix, his cross-shaped black blade Yoru, and the small cross dagger he wears around his neck. Who knows what Oda is trying to say with this, but for a man to wield his faith as a sword, it makes you question what Mihawk believes. Also, there have been several instances where Zoro has bluntly stated that he does not believe in God and does not pray. The only thing he believes in is himself. It is said that despite claiming to believe in nothing, that despite maybe being an atheist, Zoro showed belief in a paradise after death and is willing to embrace a path of death and suffering, the path of Ashura, in order to achieve his dream, and we have seen Zoro suffer throughout Oda's story. A suffering that began with the death of Kuina, Zoro's greatest injury, I would argue, the largest and deepest scar he carries. A lot of this does relate to King the Wildfire's own character, as in personality, potential belief systems, and character design. He is an angelic figure with many possible inspirations. Who knows how many of them Oda combined into one, how many mythologies, how many legends. We'll go over all of them, but there might be an ironic mix of good and evil as displayed by his angelic as well as demonic figure. But in respect to this, Usopp had joked in the past that Zoro's behavior in his life was not likely to get him into heaven, with Zoro becoming offended because Usopp implied that he would go to hell. We know that many of Usopp's jokes or lies come true, and during Thriller Bark, Kuma, who is another character related to holy imagery like Mihawk, is often seen holding a Bible. He tells Zoro he will surely experience hell, but I think Zoro will actually be shown hell in his fight against King, a sadist who enjoys torturing people and is known to get pleasure out of it. The wildfire epithet might literally introduce Zoro to the flames of hell somehow. Another test of belief in himself, another trial of death to overcome. And so I also like the idea of Zoro challenging King, who potentially encompasses some holy or demonic traits, because like Luffy, who has repeatedly challenged gods from Enel to Wano's supposed dragon deity Kaido, and maybe Imu-sama at the end, the Will of D being God's natural enemy or the natural enemy of the gods. Zoro too challenges fate, destiny, and refuses to back down, but we'll touch more on this in a moment. But whether it be gods or devils or even death itself, no man, no person or thing can take his life away. This Zoro believes and has lived by, and sometimes in battle, not only dreams but varying beliefs collide. But what is King in terms of his race? And how will his past in relation to this affect his fight with Zoro, since Oda typically cares more about the story being told and the emotions you come away with than the actual fight itself? Big Mom is the first to bring up King's ancient race and is surprised he survived. It is said his people were supposedly extinguished from history, and it is implied that King is the last of his kind. Perhaps this takes us back to the Gorosei and what they said about a great cleansing. In chapter 1022, King's race is mentioned again, and all this teasing makes you think it's gotta be important somehow, some way. Marco says he used to hear rumors about a certain fire conjuring race that lived on top of the Red Line. King of the Flames, huh? King of the Wildfire. The Red Line, literally translated as Continent of the Red Earth, is the One Piece world's only continent, and aside from the Grand Line, it intersects or divides the 4 seas of the world, the North and West Blues and the South and East Blues. The Red Line bears the world capital Merijois and is directly over Fishman Island, which is located below underwater. I bring up Fishman Island because of the other races out there, some of which were included during the slave auctions of the exotic species during Saboti, which others like King's race maybe were not included for a reason. Fishmen can bend water using Fishman karate. They live under the sea. In regards to Minks, who, in terms of the connection of ancient races to the Red Line, where are the people of Zou originally from? The Red Line as well? The Ancient Kingdom? Forced to flee because of an ancient war maybe, the Void Century. But just as fishmen manipulate water, Minks can use electricity somehow. Maybe their fur or the hair on their bodies serves as a conductor. And so now we have King's ancient race, said to be able to conjure things. We don't know if that's exclusive to fire or if he can conjure other elements. The blue flame from the anime filler seems to be legitimate now, as in something King conjured himself, a flame different, maybe more powerful than the standard Diable Jambe-like fire he used on his leg to kick Big Mom's ship over the edge of the waterfall. This conjuring in the blue fire is what inspired one part of this video based on something I recently discovered. Obviously there's no way to know if this is what Oda is basing King off of, but we'll discuss it anyways before moving on to the fight between Zoro and King, including some information I introduced in a video that is no longer on the channel. Some of you might remember it. Also, given the proximity of the Red Line to the sun, I wondered if the sun plays any role in their abilities. Fishmen and water, Minks and the moon. What about King's race? Fire and the sun. If I had to choose from all the options, I'd say bird race is the most likely. We have fish, fishmen under the sea, mammals, minks on the land, and what we're missing now are birds in the air, maybe overlooking the winged humans from Skypiea. But the blue flame, it's interesting that Marco as an immortal phoenix has been paired against King. Both use fire, and it seems both might be able to conjure blue flames. Marco's are said to be regenerative, and we know from his fight with Big Mom that his flames are quite unique, these are his words, having been able to hurt Prometheus, who we've only seen hurt from water in the past from Jinbei. Although Zoro has now shown himself able to cut fire itself, and so Prometheus himself. Zoro learning the foxfire cutting technique of Kinemon that had been foreshadowed since Punk Hazard, and it's interesting that Zoro has one element of the technique and not the other, the ability to conjure flames, that Kinemon has also displayed. We'll come back to this. But Marco, for whatever reason, was able to consume or overpower King's own flames. Maybe because the legend of the Phoenix says it has control over all fire and can incinerate anything, even fire. That is how Marco hurt Prometheus, I guess. Maybe Marco incinerated King's fire also. I'm reminded of Akainu versus Ace, and their collision on Marineford. We are reminded that some elements, some abilities are greater than others. People are surprised by the aftermath, that Ace got burned, and Akainu tells him as a Logia, you cannot be careless, you cannot be overconfident. You're just fire. My magma can burn even you. My powers are far superior to yours. Unlike Ace, Marco was able to endure for a while Akainu's magma when protecting Luffy, so I think Marco's fire is greater than Ace's or Prometheus's, and rather than comparing Ace and Akainu as Logia, look at Marco and King as Zoan Devil Fruit users. While King's powers are not related to his Devil Fruit, they are to his winged race, and Marco just so happens to become a winged creature when he transforms into his Zoan form. Both use fire. Maybe King can use blue fire, blue flames. Although Marco's blue flames of resurrection seem largely focused upon healing properties, maybe King's serve an opposite purpose: destruction, total annihilation. But King's Devil Fruit has been theorized to be a representation of something prehistoric, as a dinosaur, dragon, and so lost to time, lost to the Void Century. But there is also the connection to yokai that we find throughout Wano and Onigashima. Yokai are ghosts, spirits that cannot rest in some cases, that haunt the world, seeking revenge. Specifically, King uses a technique against Marco titled Andan, Divine Flame. He conjures it above his right hand. There is a yokai known as Ao Andan, if I'm saying that right, meaning Blue Lantern or Blue Lantern Ghost, a creature meant to represent the spirit that appeared during Hyaku Monogatari, Kaidankai meetings. After the last story was told, the Ao Andan appears as a human with a blue complexion and twin horns from his brow and sharp teeth. Some think King might be a lizard race or bird race, a Valkyrie maybe, who knows, but I like some of the connections we can draw from what we'll next discuss. But in terms of a lantern, a possible translation where an owl means blue and King's attack, Andan, supposedly means a reference to a lantern or lamp. King does look like a candle, his head being the tip of the match. Another translation of the attack is Imperial Flame or Flame Emperor, which reminds me of the one and only Porcus Dies. In the summertime of old Japan, when the oppressive heat and humidity rendered daylight activity all but unbearable, the sun of flame that scorched the skin, people longed for the night and the scant relief brought by the setting sun. There people would play a game known as Hyaku Monogatari Kaidankai, or a gathering of 100 weird tales, and silently, one by one, the spirits would return. 100 candles would be placed in a circle, and the players would each tell a ghoulish tale, often a story from their local village or perhaps a more personal experience. As each tale ended, the storyteller would douse a single candle, the light slowly fading as the tension rose. The game was said to be a ritual of evocation, the expiration of each story and each candle summoning more spiritual energy, transforming the room into a beacon for the dead. With the vanishing of the final light, someone or something terrible would be waiting in the darkness. After the 100 candles game, when the last story is told and the last light extinguished, something is said to appear from this darkness, and I find the idea of a light being extinguished from the world to be interesting. In fact, relevant to King's ancient race. The Gorosei kneeling before Imu ask, after pondering the great cleansing, which light should be extinguished from history? The name of the person or people. For some from the Edo period, the thing that arose from the darkness was Ao Andan, the Blue Lantern Ghost. A ghost from the past in a metaphorical sense, if we apply it to King. Something that Big Mom was surprised survived, kind of like the scabbards being seen as ghosts by Orochi and others. We even get a reference to ghosts in chapter 1022 when King's race is brought up again during Raizo and Fukurokujo's fight. But Hyaku Monogatari Kaidankai is believed to be a game originally created by the samurai as a test of courage, to see who was brave enough to withstand the gruesome tales and who would succumb and shiver when the final light was doused, snuffed out. I'm sure you're thinking what I'm thinking. A test of courage. Snachi. The word or phrase Zoro taught to Momonosuke. A saying that is common among samurai that the scabbards have used and did use before Kaido. Something people will say when they're prepared to throw it all away. Wit, fear, even their lives. Imagine King putting Zoro through a test of courage, what I call a trial of death. Something he's experienced on his path to becoming the world's greatest many times before. Maybe not so much a test involving fear, but instead pain. Since again, King is supposed to be a sadist, and you can inflict a lot of pain and torture with fire. There is another yokai worth mentioning, and maybe Oda combined the Ao Andan legend with this one to get blue and fire all together. The Tengu. Now, there are various Tengu legends, and I read that many can use the same ability, but let's focus on the Ko Tengu, or Divine Crow or Raven Tengu. Ko Tengus resemble large birds of prey with human-like characteristics. They often wear the robes of hermits, and sometimes carry the fine weapons or other items stolen from human homes or temples. The Ko Tengu, along with other Tengu, are often seen wielding a sword or katana. Similar to King sadism, Ko Tengu behave like savage monsters. When angered, they throw tantrums and go on destructive rampages, taking out their anger on anything near them. Ko Tengu are said to have little respect for humans also. They feast on human flesh and commit torture and other violent crimes against them for fun. Tengu are known for using orange fireballs like King, and there is a move known as Tengubi. Something I found interesting is Ko Tengu's greatest weakness, overconfidence. Foolish Ko Tengu overestimate their own intelligence when trying to trick humans and end up being tricked themselves. I wonder if King will overestimate his own strength against Zoro. Like his fellow All-Stars, Queen and Jack, King is named after the playing card rank, fitting with the card-based naming scheme of the Beast Pirates. The concept of games and cards is important because Ao Andan in Japan is said to be the equivalent of Bloody Mary in the West. There is a game known as Scabby Queen, a traditional British card game which is a version of the well-known game Old Maid, where after the loser must go to a room with a mirror, turn off the lights and say Bloody Mary 3 times. According to legend, if you do this, a ghost will be summoned and curse the loser for life. It's only effective if you play with people that believe that sort of thing, and so bringing the discussion back down to earth. Someone like Zoro, a fearless conqueror that doesn't believe in God, hardly any superstition, is unlikely to feel any fear here. As for the inspiration behind King's race and the connection maybe of his powers to Ao Andan, we'll see if Oda ever confirms this or not. The summoning of this yokai or ghost fits both an English and Japanese proverb, "Speak of the devil, and the devil shall appear." It was feared that merely talking about ghosts or spirits for long enough would cause them to materialize for real. I want to talk now about how King might be in some ways connected to the story of the devil, and like so many other characters, Robin, Roger, etc., those from the D-Clan and others were considered to be devils. First off, King's design might be inspired by the figure on the cover art of the album Angel of Retribution by the British heavy metal band Judas Priest, an angel of retribution. Once again, holy imagery and another religious figure for Zoro to fight against. It kinda reminds me of Michael the Archangel. But retribution for what? Maybe the reason why King might be the last of his kind. Maybe just as Zoro shares his dream and strength with Kuina, King does with his people, his erased clan. This in part is what makes each of them so strong. But devils and gods, angels and demons, many Christians believe the devil was once a beautiful angel named Lucifer who defied God and fell from grace. This assumption that he is a fallen angel and so King's people were forced out of heaven, cast down by God himself, relates to several things I'm currently writing about and planning videos for. The D-Clan, Doflamingo the heavenly demon as a fallen celestial dragon. We can go down the list with other examples, but King has often been compared to the guards from Impel Down. And this contrast is striking if there is some truth to the comparison. An ancient race atop the Red Line cast down to earth or hell by the gods. Hell raises the old idea of King's design and its connection to Impel Down, which has various floors named after hell. The idea that the devil governs hell may have come from the poem by Dante, The Divine Comedy, published in the early 14th century. In it, God created hell when he threw the devil and his demons out of heaven with such power that they created an enormous hole in the center of the earth. And this story reminds me of a big topic in the One Piece community. You've probably seen Ohara's video about Laugh Tale and the hole under Eni's lobby. I'm working on my response video right now and actually delayed it for this video. It should be done shortly though. But maybe King's race, or the D-Clan or Ancient Kingdom, is connected to the telling of the Divine Comedy. Maybe they are the devils, quote-unquote, that were defeated and cast down, and the hole under Eni's lobby is a byproduct of that war, of the destruction. So maybe King is a fallen angel. But something else I wanted to talk about then is the flag of Impel Down, a crown with wings. A crown belongs to a king. Oda was asked in SBS about the flag as well as a similar symbol seen on the guards at that jail. Oda, what's the mark used by Magellan and the others in Impel Down? Is it strength, the kanji for it? because apparently the mark means force in Chinese, and in Japanese it is chikara, if I'm saying that right, and it means power. We know that King said Kaido's crew is one based on meritocracy, and they admire power and only respect strength in others. The weak live and the strong die. But Oda responds to the question about what the symbol means by saying, "Oh, I got this question from Toei Animation too." If you look carefully at the mark on the armbands and collars of the soldiers, you'll notice that the insignia is slightly different, right? There are two different marks, but really, they share the same base. Both marks symbolize the I and D of Impel Down, the initials. They overlap like this. And here you can see the symbol on the screen, what Oda was talking about. Now some of you might be getting the same idea as me, but I'll save that for the next video like I said. Oda goes on to say, and so you get this mark. And if you cut it differently, you get this mark. It doesn't really matter though. But maybe it does matter, and Oda's lying to us. Impel means in English to force or drive, and so it matches up with the prior kanji. So impel down means to force down, below, to the bottom. Maybe some of you see where this is going. Until next time though. But for this video topic, King's race might have been forced out or forced down from the red line. There is also the D that Oda made sure to separate from the I, and he connects it to the concept of being sent or maybe going down, which is interesting. Also, the guards of Impel Down are seen wearing real or fake wings, often black in color like King's wings. It reminds me of Skypiea and the various tribes there, Skypians, Shandians, Birkins with different wings. Whether all are real or whether or not some are fake matters only so much as to point out the difference between dressing up as a race and actually belonging to one. In King's case, maybe the guards in Impel Down are playing dress up. Maybe they know or don't know the history of those wings, of the race that was cast down from heaven, from the Red Line or the Ancient Kingdom. But something that stood out to me, and it relates to what Morge said to me about Enel and Imu being similar in many ways, one potentially telling or foreshadowing the story of the other, is that Skypians follow the leadership of their ruling governor, which they call God or Kami. They rarely question the actions of their ruling caste, even when faced with the fearsome Enel. Think of the celestial dragons, the 5 elder stars, and for Enel, Imu-sama, as the supreme or godly being of Mary Joie. Long ago, the ancestors of Skypians entered a war with the Shandians over their homeland, a war that lasted hundreds of years, fighting over land. If Oda were to continue this pattern of inversion, when the Red Line is a continent and so a massive land mass, instead of foreigners or intruders being blasted into the sky, imagine intruders or aliens, you could say, falling down, crashing into or upon the Red Line and encroaching upon the territory of King's people, wiping them out in a bloody war and stealing the land of the Red Line for themselves, or attacking the Ancient Kingdom. In one instance, the people of the Blue Sea are launched into the air from the earth. In the other, those from outer space might have landed upon the planet, falling from the moons or something above for whatever reason. It is said Skypians originated from the moon, along with the Birkins and maybe Shandians, leaving behind their friends, the Spacies. Another video I'm working on involves something similar and also connects to Imu, I think. The Marys on Onigashima, the robots or cyborgs that have been spying on the Alliance all over Onigashima. Again, the similarities between the story of Skypiea and a potential connection to the celestial dragons and Imu are striking. But if it seems a little vague, hopefully you'll understand the connection more when that video drops. But when resources on the moon were used up, the Skypians along with the Shandians and Birkins moved to the Blue Seas. At some point, the three races separated and became what they are today. So maybe King's race has been scattered about. Maybe some now know who they are, maybe others don't. Maybe some of King's people are from the Red Line, whereas others guard Impel Down. Or maybe those guards are just paying homage, whether knowingly or not, to the ancient race that was lost above. Skypiea can be thought of as the opposite of Impel Down. One is cast down, the other is cast up. Located in the White Sea, the entrance to Skypiea is known as Tengoku no Mon, or Heaven's Gate, and so one is a gateway to heaven, whereas Impel Down serves as a gateway to hell, or does it hint at another realm, another gateway below? In terms of the conjuring fire ability of King's race, I'll just point out to you an often overlooked scene from Impel Down where Hannibal fights Luffy. As you can see, he summons a fire from his sword. The other thing is Hannibal's sword is called Kesui. I think I'm saying that right, literally meaning bloodsucker. Think of vampires, humanoids with bat-like wings, and transformations at times that can conjure things too. Vampires are said to be from the darkest parts of hell. and so another hellish reference with Impel Down. Some stories of vampires tell of them using pyrokinesis. They have control over fire and can summon heat and fire with their minds and hands. Now, do I think King is a vampire? No, I don't. But I want to relate all these things together anyways, Oda's inspirations being numerous. This is true of writers in general, but again, Impel Down, the wildfires of Hades or Hell, the black wings from Hannibal to Magellan and others there. The ability to conjure fire is seen in Hannibal and now King. It just seems like there's something there worth considering, especially given Impel Down's association with Hell, which the Bible refers to as a place of everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And so, everlasting fire, King the wildfire, King of the everlasting flames. Who can really say where Oda got his inspiration from? Aside from Hannibal, others can manifest flames as well, but maybe their abilities have different explanations. Kinemon doesn't just cut fire, he can conjure or summon it somehow. I wouldn't be surprised if Zoro learns to not only cut fire, but summon fire too. As for King's blue flames, maybe that's one way for Oda to avoid Zoro's breath of all things, the power to cut anything. Maybe Zoro will surprise King by finding a way to cut even his divine fire, blue flames. Regarding that, maybe King is also a conqueror. Maybe we'll get a Conquerors clash between Zoro and King aside from Luffy and Kaido. Some people have brought up lineage factors, and my response has been Sanji was supposed to be a failure, at least in the eyes of his family, the Vinsmoke. Some say Sanji is a late bloomer, and King's race or genetic DNA was somehow placed inside of Sanji's genetic structure or code. The thing about King though is because his race is ancient and should have been wiped out ages ago, there shouldn't be others like him out there. How long has he been alive for? It can't have been for hundreds of years unless that's something unique to his kind, like the giants. So if he's young or relatively new, where are his parents or relatives? Vegapunk plays a role in a lot of things that define the Beast Pirates. Kaido being experimented upon, maybe his DNA being stolen to make Momonosuke's Devil Fruit. There are Smile Fruits. Queen used to be a part of the same research team as Vegapunk, and his body is modified as a cyborg or android. And so is King a modified human? Or was he, like Kaido, experimented upon, just as Kaido had his DNA taken from him? Was King's DNA taken away and put into somebody else? I found it interesting that Sanji has a one-on-one scene with Momonosuke wherein he compliments him for acknowledging his family name and being brave. Many expect Sanji to maybe one day do the same, who knows? He has accepted the German technology. What if there's something else about Sanji that he hasn't yet accepted? Something related to his blood, his bloodline, and so his lineage. But again, is King a modified human? In what way? Is he not actually from an ancient race, but is instead mixed with their DNA, spliced? Is he another Sanji, another Momonosuke, is what I'm asking. Given the comparison between the first time each character used a fire ability, Sanji's Diable Jambe and the Fire King summons around his own leg, I guess we'll find out soon enough. Another winged race, the Skypians use something known as a mantra, which is just Skypia's name for observation haki, just as Rio is Wano's name for arm and haki or haki flow. Maybe the concept of conjuring is nothing more than what Luffy, Sanji, and others can do, summoning or manipulating elements with one's spirit and emotions. Sanji's Diable Jambe has moved beyond friction to simply being able to be used at will. The angrier he is, the hotter he burns, it is said. Luffy's own Red Hawk has been connected to not just friction for the longest while, but recent moments such as his Red Rock attack against Kaido involve burning memories. The spirit that rages, conjuring fire whenever he's angry. The memories of certain people or events fueling the fire within. I wonder if King's own fire burns hotter the angrier he is. If the memories or the thought of the horrors inflicted upon him or his clan will summon a stronger flame. But in terms of King's past, his captain Kaido seems to be doing to others what they did to him, his experiments on the people of Wano, their imprisonment in Udon. We don't know where Kaido was imprisoned at or how he escaped. Maybe King as a torturer is simply doing to others, to humans, what they did to him. Maybe he truly exhibits and has embraced the hatred to humans that Fisher Tiger himself once tried to suppress for how the humans treated fishmen. And so King takes pleasure out of causing human suffering. We haven't seen this side of him yet. Some wonder what King is hiding under his bodysuit, no way to know. Some say King is just a sadist, and that's how they dress, a bodysuit akin to Sadie from Impel Down, whose favorite food is said to be the screams of agony from her prisoners. But a better idea is King is hiding his race, that maybe he's covered in scales or feathers or both or something else. He might have also, if a prior prisoner or victim of persecution, suffered injuries or scars or burns, and he covers himself up to conceal this. Katakuri, for one, hid his face for this very reason, discrimination faced from not just outsiders, but even his own family. As an ancient race and a wanted man, maybe it'd be too dangerous to reveal his true identity. It's also strange how King and Queen don't seem to have original or traditional names. Big Mom, for one, is actually Charlotte Linlin, just a thought. Queen might have a reason for hiding his own name because he was on Vegapunk's research team, Mads. So yeah, they're all wanted for various reasons beyond simply being pirates. Something else I found that could potentially tie into Oda's inspiration for King relates to the work he did at the age of 19, I think, as an assistant to Nobuhiro Watsuki on Rurouni Kenshin, a series based in Japan akin to the land of Wano. King is very similar to Shishio Makoto. To give you a brief history, and at this point I'd assume most of you have seen Rurouni Kenshin by now. If you haven't, well, I'm sorry. But the info is crucial to understanding where I'm going with all this. Shishio's skill with the blade was legendary. He was someone with great ambition and greed, and this lent to his strength. For the most part, he did not fight for others, only himself, to observe the extent of his own ability, the joy of letting others feel his power and presence. Apparently, Shishio had worked as an assassin for the government, and his crimes were so horrendous they were covered up, erased from history. Not only that, the government attempted to kill him. He was doused in oil and burned alive, and yet, miraculously, Shishio survived. So, persecuted by the world government, but somehow survived. King, the last of his kind. Despite his survival, Shishio had sustained severe burns to his entire body to the point that he must wear bandages day and night to cover his disfigured skin. It is said he has the appearance of a mummy. Apparently this led to the destruction of Shishio's sweat glands, creating his fatal weakness of hypothermia, and Shishio alludes to this as the fires of hell raging within him. It would seem Shishio suffered from frequent spontaneous combustions if he moved around too much. Because of his abnormal rising body temperatures, he would spontaneously burst into flames. There is even a moment in the manga, or better yet the anime, in which Shishio declares, "In my body lingers the heat of infernal flames." In terms of Shishio's personality, one could argue Shishio had become the very fire that had sought to destroy him, and he carried that agony forward as motivation in all this might. And of course, this is all fun speculation, so I stress this might parallel future reveals as to King's past in some way. Shishio Makoto is extremely ruthless and cruel, sadistic. He strongly believes in the concept of social Darwinism, in which the weak exist for the benefit of the strong, or in his words, the weak are food for the strong, mirroring the Beast Pirate's apparent philosophy of the strong live and the weak die, and Kaido's apparent attempt at recruiting the strongest of the strong into his crew. So I actually got a chance to read chapter 1023, and the sadism of Shishio is similar to King in many ways. In chapter 1023, we get confirmation that King is a bloodthirsty brute, the sadistic fighter Queen had made him out to be early on upon his initial introduction. Just like Mr. One, we get a recreation of Zoro fighting someone that could pass as a swordsman kind of, but doesn't claim to be one because of his other methods of combat. In King's words, the explanation for this is he doesn't understand why anyone would stick to traditional forms of fighting and techniques in a real battle when your life is on the line, when the only thing standing between you and death is winning at all costs. One last point on Shishio, his abilities mirror those of King's, at least from what we've seen so far, a blade and fire, but Shishio also used kicks and other forms of combat to win. While preferring to strike his foe down fast with his blade, Shishio has remarkable hand-to-hand combat prowess and raw strength as well. In that way, Shishio, like King, wasn't just a swordsman as mentioned. He was a warrior of various means. The lethality of Shishio's legendary blade is further increased by the proper soaking of it in the flesh and body fat of the victims he had killed over the years. As a result of this process, he can execute fire-oriented techniques using the oils as fuel. Some have suggested King, because of his two wings, will fight in a manner similar to that of a Valkyrie. His wings become blades, so King would have a three-sword style like Zoro. And now that we've seen King use his legs against Zoro, who would have thought this would become the Sanji versus Zoro fight we've always wanted? Shishio was infamous for something called the Three-Sword Secret. It basically involves a series of fire techniques, their names being Burning Soul, Crimson Lotus, and the Fire-Bearing Spirit God. Although all of these techniques were achieved through a single blade, not three. But I think for each, for Sanji versus Queen and Zoro versus King, we are getting a recreation of, if on a smaller scale, of the Katakuri-Luffy matchup, especially in Zoro's case. King perhaps saying, "I can do anything, you can do better." Katakuri having copied Luffy, mocking him, looking down on his abilities because he was better in every way. How would Zoro feel if someone imitated his three-sword style? How would Zoro feel if someone came to acknowledge or even look down upon his strength? Zoro's had so many fights over the years, but very few against actual qualified or capable swordsmen. None that has challenged him quite like Mihawk. I really think that should change with King. Ever since the beginning of Wano, maybe long before Wano even started, people have been speculating about Zoro's moment to shine post-time skip. Something as remarkable as Thriller Bark when Zoro sacrificed his life for his captains. We got that with Zoro on the rooftop, enduring an attack from two emperors as if nothing happened. Then scarring Kaido to protect his captain. It's been clear to me, at least, that Zoro would fight King ever since he cut Prometheus. His ability to use Kinemon's Foxfire style suggesting it would be needed to cut King's flames. The fact that we haven't seen Zoro conjure fire from his blade might be deliberate. There's a scene from the past, from early pre-time skip, maybe East Blue, where Zoro uses fire swords to defeat his opponent. Now, while the fire was not conjured by himself, he used his opponent's ability against himself. Maybe Zoro, just as Luffy learned Future Sight from Katakuri during their battle, will come to summon fire with his blades like King. But would that overshadow Sanji too much because he uses a lot of fire-based abilities? Either he can't or he can. Maybe we'll get a flashback to explain how Zoro learned the technique. Did Kinemon teach him while the Straw Hats were Whole Cake Island? Mihawk said any sword can become a black blade, and this I believe relates to the spirit. I wouldn't be surprised if any sword can become a fire sword. There is an actual moment from Thriller Bark where Zoro uses a dragon-based attack to defeat Ryuma and he conjures blue flames somehow. He lights the wound of Ryuma on fire. Oda has never bothered to explain this. I would add that the fire is blue. Here on Onigashima, Zoro appears to have used the same technique on the rooftop, striking fear into Big Mom so much so that she told Kaido to avoid it. Maybe we'll see Zoro try his hand at that move again. But in terms of adversity, the trials of death Zoro faced in the past, to those that await him now and in the future, what will Zoro's fight with King look like? Both value strength. King being the strongest aside from Kaido. I think the high regard Zoro has for his own captain will be or is mirrored by King. Kaido says if they don't see a body, their faith in you will never die. In the past, in chapter 333, Zoro mentions the crew placing an undying faith in their captain. So long as he doesn't ever doubt himself, it will endure. To think this will later tie into the qualities of not just captains, but kings, conquerors. An aspect of Conquerors hockey being something rarely said about not doubting, will, conviction. That is the secret of true strength. Since many have confused Zoro for the captain over the course of the story, it's no surprise that he is also a conqueror. To continue that parallel, maybe King is too. Queen told us King is a sadistic freak and loves to torture, and there are various moments when you could say Zoro is as well. A few quotes that come to mind are, have you ever seen a wild beast that you were sure would not bite? Or what he said to Kaku when drawing his sword, it has been growling, it craves blood. We don't know if King has a cursed sword, but like I said earlier, maybe we'll see a side of him similar to Shiryu of the Rain's own bloodlust or Zoro's. King being a torturer makes me think about the path of Ashura. Enduring pain and the trials of death Zoro must continuously face. Zoro is still recovering from his injuries, enduring pain with the aid of the medicine given to him in chapter 1017 that causes you to suffer twice as much as you were suffering before the healing process began. Zoro says he doesn't care what happens to him later. The only thing that matters is being able to fight now. So look out for Zoro being pushed beyond his limits this fight. It might be reminiscent of Zoro versus Mihawk, how after being stabbed he wouldn't step away, he wouldn't back down from death. Zoro just stood there, unfazed, injured but determined to press forward. Mihawk then wonders if Zoro was trying to get himself killed. Did Zoro wish for his heart to be pierced? Was he trying to die? Zoro, struggling to find an answer, replies that he has a feeling. Something in his gut tells him that if he takes a step back from Mihawk's blade, if he runs from or cowers before death, if he isn't prepared to risk it all, then he, Zoro, would lose something far more valuable than his own life. He would lose his dream. To which Mihawk responds, yes, such is defeat. Zoro's words to Mihawk that he would much rather die than surrender, than to forfeit his dream, impresses upon Mihawk Zoro's remarkable conviction. Mihawk seems to relate this conviction to strength, that willpower is indeed an ability or attribute, a part of Oda's power system, and Zoro's strength or conviction is not often seen in this world. Zoro says at the end of chapter 1022 that if they win this, Luffy will be that much closer to becoming the Pirate King, and it seems like the willingness to die for the dreams of others, almost as if their dream was your own, seems important. His later conflict with Kuma reminds us of this. The willingness to abandon individual ambition, something that King may or may not share in common with Zoro. What is King's ambition, I'm asking? In the fight with Kuma, Zoro experienced hell, enduring a burden he alone could carry. During his fight, Kuma told Zoro he will surely die and experience hell, but nothing happened. Will we get another moment of this? There is also a fight that occurred during Arlong Park. In Chapter 84, Zoro is described as suffering in silence, wounds given by Mihawk that were so deep an ordinary man could not survive them. We see Sanji's reaction, how he thought it was strange Zoro could suddenly get up out of nowhere. It was impossible for him to recover so fast. Maybe we'll see this play out again. Zoro would later rise and say, "Listen up. There's a man I have to meet, and until I see him again, no one can take my life. Nothing in this world, not even death." No amount of pain can impede his ambition. In Chapter 85, Zoro repeatedly acknowledges his failing condition, remarking that even if most people would pass up from these wounds, I cannot fall. Even if these wounds would kill most people, I cannot die. I have to live to defeat Hawkeye Mihawk. I cannot lose. This recitation reminds me of what Zoro said about the weight of his sword during Arlong Park, the burden he carries. How it isn't about the number of blades, but the will behind each one. Even a single sword can defeat 9, 6, or even 3. Zoro having to learn this the hard way himself in the past. What drives you? What makes you want to win so badly that you would even risk your life? The blade in many ways is a reflection of not just strength but will, the warrior's mindset. And this might relate to something mentioned in Oda's series Monsters and the concept of a warrior's soul in regards to Ryuma and other swordsmen. Something I had mentioned a year or so ago in predicting Zoro would fight King given the doubts that had arisen is how interesting it is that Oda, in the series Monsters, when mentioning a warrior's soul, presents Ryuma with a potential opponent, a great swordsman named King. Ryuma, having heard the reputation of King, hoped to one day fight against him. He believed that this King must hold a great warrior's soul and would make a worthy adversary. The irony, however, is that Ryuma himself was King, because the name King was given to him by the people he saved. He unfortunately did not know it himself, and so it is Ryuma with the great warrior's soul. And so Zoro, if related via blood or an inheritance of will, must have a great warrior's soul too. And it's worth asking with respect to Zoro's fight with King the Wildfire. What is a king to a god? A god of the blade. While Zoro only had 3 blades against Hachi, in Chapter 85 he says to look at them. They're much weightier than others, because black blades might be related to the will or the spirit of the wielder, the strength of their warrior's soul. We have to consider a moment from Thriller Bark where Zoro remarks about how heavy Shusui is, maybe a hint at the weight of the soul of a black blade, the burden of greatness, the burden of strength. How heavy are his swords now? Are they heavy, black enough? Given the various comparisons made between Zoro and the most famous members of the Shimotsuki clan, those that fought Kaido and a dragon in the sky before him, maybe after defeating King, or maybe after heading back to the rooftop to fight Kaido to slay a dragon over the flower capital, as Ryuma had done, as maybe Shimotsuki Ushimaru had failed to do, Zoro will further live up to the legend and the comparisons made between him and the prior sword god by obtaining a black blade. If Zoro unlocks a black blade against King, will he use it to finish off Kaido after Luffy defeats him, or will the two take down Kaido together? What else drives Zoro and King? King fights for his people perhaps, his erased or lost clan, the ancient race, the Lunarians, maybe a dream. Maybe he puts equal faith in his captain Kaido, but like Zoro would not follow someone that was far weaker than him, that did not exude the qualities of a leader, of a king. Maybe this means just as Zoro wasn't surprised Luffy could use Conquerors during Fishman Island, and now we see that Zoro can use it too. Maybe King is also a conqueror and possesses the color of the Supreme King. But the willingness to die for the dreams of others, for Kaido's dream, for Luffy's dream, almost as if their dream was your own, seems important. What does Kaido dream of? A world of mayhem, a world of violence. What will King do to usher in his captain's vision? Zoro's later conflict with Kuma reminds us of this. The willingness to abandon individual ambition, something that King may or may not share in common. If he doesn't, if he only fights for his own strength, maybe that is why he will lose, because Zoro doesn't fight alone. Or maybe Zoro will find himself paired against someone that does fight for others, for his people, for his race, for his tribe. Some have wondered if Zoro is too strong for King, having scarred Kaido earlier. They're asking if King is capable of such a thing too, scarring his captain, and if not, is Zoro not already stronger? What's the point of this fight exactly? Well, like I said earlier about how Oda writes fights, to tell a story, about people, places, and dreams, why each swordsman fights. And it is telling that blades tell a story too, and so you have to wonder about King's own blade, its name, its rank. Does it carry a will as great as Enma and Odin, to open the borders of Wano, the water Ichimonji and Kuina to become the world's strongest, or a curse or bloodlust as powerful as the Kitetsu? Another ability I forgot to mention, Awakening. King and Zoro both seem to value strength. They might each push themselves beyond their limits and have to overcome it somehow. We have yet to see an awakening yet for Zoans beyond the guards have been pulled down. Does King have an awakening? Will he break his limits? Will Zoro do the same? What else does Zoro have beyond Ashura? In terms of pre-time skip, Zoro seemed to struggle a lot more. We can go as far back as his fight with Dracula Mihawk, and I think this battle is so perfect in terms of the mindset Zoro may have returned to. Right now, after 2 years of training under the instruction of the world's strongest swordsman, Zoro probably feels invincible. But the past words of Mihawk still ring true. Hear me, little frog in his well. It's time for you to realize that the world is much bigger than what it seems from down there. This is one translation or interpretation of the original Japanese. I wanted to quote it because it sounded very Mihawk-like, very clairvoyant, and I guess you could say Shakespearean. Another interpretation of these words is Zoro was at the time a person who had never experienced the real world. That is, he was unaware of the great distance, the vast canyon or gap in strength that existed between his current status and the world's strongest swordsman, that there were others out there near Mihawk's level, that there were others in his way. I've always loved the sense of disbelief from Zoro, that his three-sword style could be stopped by another man's pocket knife, that it wasn't possible for the world to be so far away. The vast distance between him and Mihawk, Zoro couldn't believe it. The weight of that tiny blade far exceeded 3 of his own. The blade, then, is only an extension of the swordsman, the warrior's soul. Before the battle had even begun, he had lost. From this match, his spirit felt as if it were crushed by an insurmountable weight, and his dream was slipping away. After being defeated, Zoro promised his captain that he would never lose again. And it is these words that have really set a high bar for Zoro ever since then, because I sincerely doubt Zoro will ever lose again. At least not to another swordsman, or a passable swordsman. Inspired by the words of Mihawk that concluded their battle. My name is Dracula Mihawk. It's too soon for you to die. Discover yourself, see the world, and grow strong, Zoro. However long it may take, I shall await you at the top. Strive with your whole heart and mind to best this blade, fierce one. Strive to surpass me, Roar-Nor. Willpower. That is his greatest ability. This he shares with Luffy as captain. The refusal to lose, to quit, never giving up, never backing down. A belief in himself that negates any reliance on gods or superstition or even devils. The kind of will, the kind of faith that can cut through anything, even fire, even the harshest of flames, even hell itself. Zoro is close. The top is not far away. Only King and a few other obstacles stand in his path, and I think the easiest One Piece theory to bet on is that Zoro will not lose. But as usual, we will have to wait and see. Don't forget to like the video, comment with your thoughts below, share this with your friends, and subscribe. Also click that notification bell. As always, there is more to come. Until next time, I'll see you all in Valhalla.
が死ぬにはまだ早い。のんきに待ってやる必要はない。我が名はドラキュール・ミホーク。己を知り、世界を知り、強くなれ。俺はこの先幾年月でもこの最強の大で貴様を待つ。この剣を越えてみよう。この俺を越えてみよう。ドロノア・ドロ。